Hello everyone and welcome to my The Bold and Beautiful Always channel. After making the decision to travel to Italy, Taylor saw a startling scene. Early in the fall, Florence was meant to be Taylor Hayes' haven, a salve for her spirit that was still raw from the rough edges of her existence in Los Angeles. The calm Arno flow and the murmuring stones of the Ponte Vecchio seemed to shut out the constant Forrester Logan dramas, the lingering pain of shattered relationships, and the demands of the workplace. Near the Boboli Gardens, she had rented a bright apartment that smelled of old paper from the antique bookshops around it. Her days had a purposeful, restorative rhythm, mornings spent drawing the impossible dome of the Duomo, afternoons spent lost in the sea of masterpieces at the Uffizi. Botticelli's Primavera felt like a personal promise of renewal, and evenings spent enjoying leisurely aperitivi in secret piazzas, where the sweet relief of anonymity blended with the bitter tang of Campari. Her therapist's voice softly reminded her to breathe, to be present, to allow the old serenity of the city to permeate into her bones as she wore flowing linen gowns and soft leather boots. Stitch by delicate stitch, she was taking back her identity and escaping the tyranny of Ridge Forrester's convoluted orbit and the ghosts of her previous transgressions. With its complex history and austere beauty, Florence seemed like the ideal location to finally let go. She had even hesitantly resumed drawing, this time in abstract watercolors that depicted the deep ochre shadows of tiny alleyways and the play of light on terracotta rooftops rather than fashion designs. It was unadulterated and pure. Taylor experienced a shaky sense of calm for the first time in years, a conviction that perhaps, just possibly, she could create a future shaped by her own decisions rather than the reverberations of other people's tragedies. Unexpectedly, a creamy envelope with the exquisite crest of the Palazzo dei Tessuti Antichi, Palace of Ancient Textiles, was placed beneath her door as an invitation. The famous Contessa Isabella della Rovere organized a private, exclusive viewing of recently uncovered Renaissance velvets and brocades, it announced. Taylor's previously buried professional curiosity erupted. Long before psychotherapy, her scholarly interest was in ancient textiles, whose elaborate weaves and symbolic hues told tales of strength, faith, and artistry. This seemed to be a sign, a mild prod to return to a neglected aspect of herself. She felt a glimmer of her former confidence when the scholar emerged from the healer's shadow, dressed carefully in a shift dress of emerald green silk that was simple but exquisitely crafted, a rare indulgence from a modest Florentine atelier. Nestled on a peaceful street close to Santa Croce, the palazzo was stunning. Inside, a lofty gallery gleamed under well-positioned spotlights, illuminating bolts of cloth on display like holy relics. It was a hidden gem with an ordinary exterior. The quiet murmur of Italian and the respect for real art filled the air. A deep crimson velvet woven with gold pomegranates, a symbol of fertility and resurrection, an indigo brocade glistening with silver fleurs-de-lis, and a piece of cloth of gold that appeared to contain trapped sunlight were among the elaborate patterns that Taylor traced with her gaze as she moved slowly and reverently. With her fingers hovering just inches above the shielded glass, she was absorbed in the technical wonder of an especially intricate weaving when she was frozen by a familiar surge of energy and a smell that pierced through the cool air of the museum, sandalwood and pricey soap. Forrester Ridge. 20 feet away, he was standing next to a display of deep blue damask, engaged in a conversation with a stunningly gorgeous woman who exuded confident authority. Taylor assumed it was Contessa Isabella della Rovere. Ridge had a new appearance. Not the tense CEO or the torn lover, but laid back, lively, and almost young. Leaning slightly in the direction of the Contessa, he pointed to the cloth with a broad, sincere smile. Taylor's breathing became labored. A bewildering medley of feelings erupted, lingering fondness, acute astonishment, a twinge of past hurt, and cautious interest. Why was he in this place? A commercial agreement? Does Forrester Creations source unique vintage patterns? However, why Florence and why now, at the same time as her precarious retreat? Ridge turned and looked around the room before she could make up her mind to get closer or to disappear. Hers was fastened onto. A pleasant, charming smile that had formerly been her worst enemy replaced the shock that registered on his face. He stepped over and briefly left the Contessa, asking, "Taylor? My God, what are you doing here?" What a wonderful surprise! He gave her a quick but hard hug while his familiar aroma filled the air. He explained that he was looking into potential historical collaborations for a special line of Forrester Heritage products when he presented the Contessa. It seemed interesting, even believable. With her impeccable English and obvious admiration for the fabrics, the Contessa exuded charm. For a brief while, Taylor's personal history was subordinated to the professional intrigue. Rach demonstrated an unexpected breadth of knowledge of Renaissance weaving techniques that he must have gathered for this endeavor when they conversed casually about the materials. It felt, for a split second, normal. Even pleasant. Their mutual love of beauty and their long-standing bond briefly returned. He asked her to a neighboring enoteca he knew for a drink after the showing. Catch up properly, away from the velvet ropes, he had urged, focusing on her. Taylor nodded in defiance of her therapist's internal cautions and her instinct to preserve her hard-won tranquility. A beverage. How could it hurt? Now she was stronger. Was she not? Nestled behind historic stone arches, the Enoteca, La Cantina del Stel, was a cozy, private cave of a space. The air smelled of preserved meats and wood barrels, and shelves creaked under the weight of dusty wine bottles. In a dim corner, they discovered a little, isolated table. The first exchange of words was easy, powered by a glass of strong Chianti Classico. They discussed the lads. Steffi was doing well in Paris, RJ was pushing limits, Florence, and the Contessa's collection. Rach was affable and perceptive, showing genuine interest in her Florentine paradise by inquiring about her flat and her drawings. His voice was tinted with a vulnerability he rarely displayed as he talked about the strains at Forrester and the aftermath of Steffi's unexpected death. Taylor sensed the familiar draw, the perilous solace of his sight. He placed another bottle order. The discussion became more in-depth and intimate. He talked about regrets, missed opportunities, the intricacy of loving Brooke, and the enduring, unsolved issue that appeared to bind him and Taylor together no matter what. His voice was low and powerful in the candlelight as he continued, "There's a history between us, Tay," quickly covering her hand on the table. The combination of the wine, the scene, and the intensity of his gaze was powerful. A depth, a resilience, that defies everything else. Taylor sensed the cautious barriers she had erected beginning to give way. Perhaps this was different. Perhaps distance and time had altered the situation. Leaning in closer, he revealed a secret fear about the Contessa deal, a possible roadblock regarding provenance rights for a particular, extremely precious bolt of cloth of gold. His voice dipped to a near whisper. "It's delicate, Tay. Isabella can be formidable. And there's another bidder, someone ruthless." He appeared to be in real distress. Taylor, the confidant and healer, experienced the same instinct to comfort and counsel. Her professional manner temporarily overcame her personal caution as she leaned in and offered advice on handling strong personalities. His face was covered in flickering shadows as the candlelight wavered. It was a heightened, true intimacy. Then, with a quick squeeze of her shoulder, he excused himself to go to the bathroom. "Don't go anywhere," he said, his smile beaming. Shortly afterward, in search of some fresh air to dispel the wine haze and the intensity of feeling, Taylor emerged into the small, dark alleyway next to the Enoteca. It was a relief to have cool night air. Leaning against the cool stone wall, she inhaled deeply as she attempted to make sense of the complicated history between them and the quaint ridge inside. She heard the voices at that point. The faraway city's peaceful hum was broken by harsh, desperate whispers. They approached a recessed entryway that was surrounded by deeper shadows farther down the alley. There was just one distinct voice, Ridge's, but it was cold and menacing, a tone she had seldom ever heard and had never used to address her. The other was a man, guttural, and spoke Italian quickly. Motivated by a spooky instinct, Taylor flattened herself against the wall and melted into the shadows next to a pile of empty wine crates. Like a trapped bird, her heart pounded against her ribs. Ridge growled, "Basta," in a surprisingly smooth, although accented, Italian. "I told you, it's handled. The Contessa is convinced the provenance is clean. Your concerns are no longer relevant." The other man mumbled something low and angry, a large shadow she could almost make out. "Clean? You think I am a fool, Forrester? The documents are forgeries. Weak ones. If she looks closer, if that American woman you were cozying up to starts poking around with her therapist mind." Taylor stopped. A woman from America? He was referring to her. Ridge's tone was cold. "Taylor Hayes is irrelevant. A coincidence. She knows nothing. And she won't." There is a threatening silence. "The deal closes tomorrow. The payment is transferred. You get your cut. Then you disappear. Back to Naples. Permanently." "My cut?" sneered the man. "You promised double for the silence. For the disposal of the previous owner's inconvenient heir. That wasn't part of the original plan. My risk doubled. Getting rid of uncomfortable heir?" Slush formed from Taylor's blood. She suppressed a gasp as her hand shot to her mouth. "Your risk was calculated," Ridge yelled in a whispery, poisonous voice. "And paid for. The accident was flawless. Now you get the original amount, or you get nothing. And remember who facilitated your liberation from certain Roman authorities last year. Cross me, Marco, and those conveniently misplaced files might just reappear." Marco, the man, snarled. "You play a dangerous game, Forrester. With dangerous people." "We are dangerous people," Ridge shot back, his voice brimming with conviction. "Now take the money and vanish. Tonight. Or the consequences will be far more permanent than a prison cell." Someone was passing an envelope, and there was a rustle of paper. Marco's last, guttural curse. Then came heavy, fading footsteps coming down the alley toward the river. For an additional second, Ridge stayed in the dark, a sharp outline against the dim light coming from a far-off window. Taylor watched as he took out his phone, the ghostly blue light from the screen shining on his face. The warmth, sensitivity, and charm he had shown just minutes earlier were completely gone from his face. It was a stranger's face, ruthless, icy, and cunning. The look of a man who can order someone killed, falsify paperwork, and threaten with the cool assurance of a predator. He cast a quick glance in the direction of the Enoteca door, where Taylor had been sitting, oblivious to the fact that she was only a few feet away, obscured by the darkness. Then, with his posture straight and the perilous moment effortlessly folded away, he turned and went swiftly back towards the light of the Enoteca. Taylor remained still. She was unable to. The smell of moist earth and trash suddenly overpowered her as she remained motionless against the rough stone of the alleyway. A monochromatic dread took the place of Florence's vivid colors. She felt like she was about to be drowned by the calm Arno. Centuries of brutality and deception appeared to be whispered by the ancient stones. The charming man who shares his confidences and Chianti? A carefully constructed illusion. The Ridge she believed to be familiar, the man she had adored, lamented, and continued to feel a strong attraction to, was a fabrication. The fear of long-term repercussions, the casual reference to disposal, and the icy, transactional voice in the dark were the realities. He was a murderer. For textiles? For a discount? Not as art, but rather as a shroud with blood money woven into its sparkling threads. The bolt of cloth of gold flashed across her head. She jerked back at the sound of the Enoteca door opening. Ridge came out with a slight scowl on his face as he looked about. "Taylor? You out here?" he asked in a worried, once more warm voice. The mask is back in place flawlessly. Every gut told me to run. Run quickly and far. Vanish into the maze-like streets and don't turn around. However, the therapist within her, the person who had dedicated her life to studying the human mind, flinched in instinctive fear. This was monstrousness, not intricacy. She was unable to comprehend, much less repair, this despair. Her haven in Florence was poisoned beyond repair. The Renaissance dream was a bloody, treacherous nightmare. With a mask of her own now securely in place, she emerged from the deeper shadows, her face composed but pale. Her voice was remarkably steady as she said, "Just needed some air, a calm surface over a turbulent abyss." Avoiding his probing eyes, she faked a tight little smile and said, "The wine went to my head a bit. I think I should call it a night, Ridge. Jet lag's catching up." His eyes briefly flashed with disappointment before comprehension swiftly covered it up. "Of course, Tay. Let me walk you back." "No" was pronounced more harshly than intended. She made it softer. The image of him by her side, the sandalwood perfume now smelling of corruption, the warmth radiating off him seeming like the heat from a tomb, was too much for her to handle. "No, thank you. It's just a few blocks. I need the walk. Clear my head properly." He observed her for a while, the unsettling insight that had once fascinated her now horrified her. Was he suspicious? In the alley, had he noticed a flicker? He just nodded, however, and leaned in to kiss her cheek. It resembled a viper's touch. "All right. Be safe. It was really good to see you, Taylor. Truly." What was shocking most about his voice was how sincere it was. The emerald silk dress felt like a target as she turned and left, her back straight, each step deliberate. She didn't turn around. She passed the luminous windows of artisan stores, couples giggling over gelato, and the imposing bulk of the Palazzo Vecchio, a city full of beauty and life that she was no longer able to perceive. The peaceful apartment, the healing sketches, and the fragile sense of self she had painstakingly rebuilt all vanished into thin air, replaced by the hard, cold knowledge of Ridge Forrester's monstrous reality. She saw only shadows and heard only the chilling echo of that conversation: disposal, permanent consequences, we are dangerous people. When she arrived at her building, her hands were shaking wildly as she struggled with the old key. She sank down against the door, shut it, and buried her face in her hands inside. Once so reassuring, the apartment's silence now reverberated with the unsaid terror. She had sought solace and healing in Florence. Rather, she had seen all of her preconceived notions about the guy who had influenced so much of her life dispel, and she had come across a darkness that seemed ready to engulf her. The destruction of the past, the dreadful uncertainty of the future, and the chilling realization that the beauty of Italy now concealed secrets as ancient and lethal as the stones themselves were what shocked her more than the words she had overheard. The healer Taylor Hayes was irreparably damaged, lost in a nightmare woven from treachery and Renaissance velvet. After Ridge chews Brooke, does Taylor leave town and join Steffi in leaving for Los Angeles? According to spoilers for The Bold and the Beautiful, Taylor Hayes might move out of town once Ridge Forrester selects Brooke Logan. Will Taylor leave Los Angeles, at least temporarily, like Steffi Forrester did? Ridge's commitment is meaningless, as demonstrated by his past actions, but Taylor has fooled herself into believing it does. Ridge has a history of switching ladies, and this time he's going to do it again. B&B is preparing for Brooke and Ridge's fate to repeat itself. It will be sufficient to finalize their reunion after Ridge saves Brooke after an accident in Italy. Taylor's ambitious dreams for a future with Ridge are about to be dashed. When Ridge ultimately decides to choose Brooke over Taylor, it will be heartbreaking and utterly humiliating. Ridge will come to the conclusion that Brooke is the woman he was destined to be with and that Eric Forrester was correct. Ridge will be forced to pursue this new beginning with Brooke even though he doesn't want to shatter Taylor's heart for the nth time. What occurs when Taylor experiences loneliness, brokenness, and resentment once more? After Ridge damages Taylor, it's reasonable to think that she would want to leave him as soon as possible. Taylor might decline to stay and watch Brooke's fresh beginning with Ridge up close. Taylor will feel as though her own love pleasure has been torn away, but Brooke will snatch Ridge back and get the happy ending she desires. Taylor is free to accompany Steffi since she recently said that she will be leaving town with the kids for a time. During Jacqueline McInnes Wood's maternity leave, Taylor may spend some time off-screen with Steffi. This would be a nice chance to give Taylor a break while the program decides how to handle her after this separation. Whatever happens, spoilers for The Bold and the Beautiful indicate that once Ridge and Brooke get back together, Taylor will receive updates on some uplifting news.